Once upon a time, in a peaceful countryside, a mother duck sat patiently on her nest. She was waiting for her eggs to hatch. Day by day, she kept them warm until the big moment arrived. Soon the eggs started to crack open, and little ducklings emerged, one after the other. They were fluffy, yellow, and adorable. However, one egg was larger than the rest and took much longer to hatch. When it finally cracked, out came a big gray duckling that looked nothing like its siblings. Everyone stared at him in surprise.
The mother duck looked at the gray duckling with curiosity, but loved him as much as the others. She thought, perhaps he will grow into his feathers. However, the other ducklings didn't share her warmth. They quacked and laughed at their brother, calling him names like ugly and weird. The farm animals joined in the teasing, too. The little gray duckling felt lonely and confused. He often wondered, why don't I look like my brothers and sisters? Why am I so different?
As days turned into weeks, the gray duckling's sadness grew. Everywhere he went, he faced ridicule. The chickens clucked, "Look at you! You don't belong here!" The pigs laughed and rolled in the mud. Even the geese, known for their kindness, ignored him. He felt like an outcast, unwanted and unloved. One morning, unable to bear the rejection anymore, the gray duckling decided to leave the farm. "Maybe I'll find a place where I fit in," he thought, wiping away a tear.
The duckling wandered far from home, traveling through forests and across fields. He encountered other birds along the way, but they all mocked him for his strange appearance. "You're the ugliest bird we've ever seen," they shouted. His heart sank further with every insult. The seasons changed, and the once green fields turned to shades of brown and gold. When winter arrived, the cold winds howled, and the duckling struggled to stay warm. He found shelter near a small frozen pond and stared at his reflection, wishing he looked like the other ducks.
Winter was harsh, and the duckling barely survived. The pond froze solid, and food was scarce. One day, a kind farmer saw the shivering duckling and took pity on him. He brought him into his warm home, where the duckling rested by the fireplace. Though the farmer's children were kind, the duckling still felt out of place. He thought, "I don't belong here either." When spring finally arrived, the duckling thanked the farmer and set off once more, determined to find where he truly belonged.
As spring brought warmer days, flowers began to bloom, and the ice melted from the ponds. One sunny morning, the duckling came across a group of swans swimming gracefully in a sparkling lake. Their white feathers shone in the sunlight, and their movements were elegant. The duckling admired them from a distance, feeling too ashamed to get closer. "They're so beautiful. They would never accept someone like me," he whispered to himself. Yet something about their calm presence drew him nearer.
Gathering his courage, the duckling approached the swans. To his surprise, they didn't mock him or turn him away. Instead, they welcomed him warmly. "Come join us," one of the swans said. The duckling hesitated and replied, "But I'm ugly. I don't deserve to be near you." The swan replied kindly and said, "Look at your reflection in the water." Nervously, the duckling glanced down and gasped. What he saw in the lake was not a gray, ugly bird, but a magnificent swan staring back at him.
The duckling couldn't believe his eyes. "Is that me?" he whispered, staring at the water. His feathers were no longer gray, but snowy white. His neck was long and graceful, just like the swans around him. Slowly, he turned to face them, feeling both joy and confusion. "How is this possible? I was so different, so ugly." One of the swans smiled and said, "You were never ugly. You were just growing into who you were meant to be." The duckling's heart filled with warmth for the first time.
As the duckling swam with the swans, he realized he had finally found where he belonged. The other swans treated him as one of their own, showing him kindness and acceptance he had never known. They taught him how to glide on the water with elegance and how to stretch his wings to soar in the sky. For the first time, he felt free, confident, and happy. He understood that being different was never a flaw but a gift waiting to be discovered.
The seasons passed, and the swan that was once an ugly duckling grew stronger and more beautiful. He often thought back to the farm and the harsh words he endured. "If only they could see me now," he thought, not with bitterness, but with pride. He realized that their opinions didn't define him. His journey had taught him to embrace himself fully. The swans around him became his family, reminding him every day that he was special and worthy of love and respect.
One day, the swan flew over the farm where he had grown up. He saw the same pond, the same animals, and even some of his siblings. They didn't recognize him, but he didn't mind. Instead of feeling anger or sadness, he felt gratitude. This place shaped me, he thought, but it doesn't limit who I am. He spread his wings wide and soared high into the sky, leaving the past behind. His heart was full of peace, and he knew he had found his true self.
The swan continued to explore the world, meeting new creatures and experiencing new adventures. Everywhere he went, others admired his beauty and grace. Yet, he never became arrogant or unkind. He remembered how it felt to be judged and lonely, so he always showed compassion to those who seemed out of place. "We all have our time to bloom," he often said to others. His story became an inspiration, teaching animals near and far about patience, acceptance, and the beauty of transformation.
One spring, while swimming in a peaceful lake, the swan saw a small bird sitting alone on the shore. The bird looked sad and out of place, much like he had once felt. Curious, he swam closer and said, "Why are you sitting here all alone?" The little bird sighed. "Everyone says I'm strange and ugly. I don't belong anywhere." The swan's heart ached at those words. "I used to feel the same way," he said gently. "But you are not ugly. You're just becoming who you're meant to be."
The swan stayed by the little bird's side, offering encouragement and sharing his own story. The bird listened with wide eyes, amazed by the swan's transformation. "Do you think I can be like you someday?" the bird asked, hope flickering in its voice. The swan nodded and said, "Of course. It takes time, but you'll see. One day, you'll look back and realize how special you've always been." The bird smiled for the first time in days, feeling a spark of hope grow inside.
As time passed, the little bird began to change. Its feathers became brighter, its wings grew stronger, and its confidence blossomed. The swan stayed nearby, cheering it on every step of the way. Eventually, the little bird realized it had grown into a stunning creature, just like the swan. Together, they soared through the sky, celebrating their journeys. The swan felt proud, not just of his own transformation, but also of helping another find its way. He understood that kindness had the power to change lives.
Years later, the swan became a legend among the lakes and forests. Animals spoke of his kindness, resilience, and the lessons he taught. They shared his story with their young, encouraging them to be patient with themselves and others. The swan continued to live a life full of joy and adventure, always remembering his humble beginnings. He often gazed at his reflection, not with vanity, but with gratitude. His journey had taught him that beauty isn't just about appearance. It's about courage, growth, and self-love.
One autumn evening, the swan sat by the lake, reflecting on his life. He thought about the challenges he had faced and the joy he had found in overcoming them. He realized that every step of his journey, even the painful ones, had been necessary for him to become who he was. Sometimes it's the hardest moments that shape us the most, he thought. As the sun set, casting golden light over the water, the swan felt a deep sense of peace.
The swan's story reminds us all that life is a journey filled with challenges and discoveries. It teaches us that being different isn't something to fear, but something to celebrate. The swan's transformation was not just physical, it was emotional and spiritual. By embracing his true self, he found happiness and purpose. His story continues to inspire, showing that beauty lies not in how others see us, but in how we see ourselves.
The lake became a sanctuary for all creatures who felt out of place. Animals from far and wide came to hear the swan's story and to find comfort in his wisdom. The swan welcomed them all, offering encouragement and hope. He understood that everyone has their own journey and that patience and kindness can make all the difference. As he floated on the peaceful waters, surrounded by those he had helped, the swan knew his life had meaning.
And so, the swan's legacy lived on, a testament to the power of transformation and self-acceptance. His journey from an ugly duckling to a beautiful swan proved that challenges are only temporary. The swan taught the world that everyone has the potential to grow into something extraordinary. His story became a timeless reminder that true beauty comes from within and that every being is valuable, no matter how they begin their journey.